Hey everyone, I hope everyone is doing well. Feels like I got behind on making these videos, but this is a very busy time of the school year for me. There is a tendency in special education for a lot of the documents to be due in the spring, and that is because of initials that happen. So with my job, there's IEPs, which stand for Individual Education Plans, and those are written annually, so they have to be reviewed each year. Typically, in a school year, if a student is going to be initiated into special education services, that has to be done through an ETR, evaluation team report. I believe that's the last letter for that acronym. But I don't directly do the ETR, but then I have to do the IEP afterwards. And generally, a lot of the ETRs tend to fall in the spring, which in a way makes sense because that's when teachers in that particular school year know the most about their students, and that's when a lot of that paperwork gets done just because of different things that go on throughout the year. So that ends up creating a lot of IEPs that tend to be due in the spring throughout the years, since annually you can review it early, but it isn't a huge difference year to year, since you want to kind of have that full year before you're reviewing different things within the annual review with that things. I just so happened that this year I'm very spring heavy. Last year, ironically, I was more fall heavy, which was actually more difficult to do because it was my first year of teaching, so I was introduced into the education profession very quickly. I had my first IEP in early October, and this year my first IEP wasn't until December, which I actually had two. I had one that was due in January that we did early because of an ETR, and then I had an additional one that was due before we went off to winter break. I have the rest of mine, and I have, I don't want to think about the number. I actually counted up the amount of students that I see during the day, which is 18. They're not all on my caseload. I have closer to 15 that are officially my students, where I do the paperwork and different things for those students, which is more than I had last year, and quite a few to have. Thankfully, after, I would say, really this week and next week, really after next week more so, I'll be a lot lighter on the paperwork, or at least it'll be more spread out, assuming I don't get hit too hard with initials. But considering the level of my caseload, I shouldn't be hit too terribly hard with initials, and they tend to be more with the younger ages anyway. There isn't as many initials with 4, 5, and 6. They tend to be 2, 3 around that age, but there is always initials that need to be done. There's always that hope I don't get hit too hard, because I still have a lot of paperwork to get through, and I've already had 2 initials, and one of them was quite excessive, and the other one was a unique situation. So I had 2 rather more work-intensive ones. I guess not really. One was typical. It was just different than what I've had in the past, and the other was more work-intensive. But definitely a lot of fun paperwork. And talking about all that, maybe we missed our front squats. This is the last front squats I had before the deload. That was with 285, and they all felt really difficult. It was a 10-pound jump from last week. When I start up the program again next week, I will most likely keep that same weight when I do the front squats. The next video that I post, it will be about the programming that I am doing. I have to figure out how to do a screen share or screencast or whatever that is, share my browser so I can go through the programming aspects that I am doing, so I can go into the specifics of that. Right here, these are the snatch pulls that I had. It was 3 sets of 4 at 240, which is ironically the weight that I tried later this week, trying to go for this above my head. You can see the pull's pretty easy. I struggle with anything shoulder-wise, and that's something that obviously I need to get better at, but it's always good to get a little bit better at pulls. With these, like I said, 3 sets of 4, that's how it's been during the week, and I added 10 pounds from the previous week. Pretty easy and straightforward. I'm trying to keep my heels down. I'm not like forcing them to stay down. If they come up a little bit, then that's fine, but the focus is really weighting and extending at the top as efficiently as I can. Moving on to jerks, which have honestly been the most surprising thing that I've been able to progress each week. I really thought these would get really stuck very quickly because I was working at a relatively high percentage. Working at 80% and then going above that is very difficult to do and to re-rack. And granted, I've had some failed reps. I've had some on this particular day where I didn't re-rack it on the second rep. I just threw it down and then took the weights off and re-racked it. So I had some of that happen, but I was able to hit all the reps in all the weeks, essentially. Some of them had to be broken up where I was doing a set of 2, a set of 1, a set of 3, or something like that. But generally, they've gone really well, which has been very surprising and very welcoming. It shows that my technique is slowly improving, and hopefully it continues to be so, because I know even watching at the videos now, there are things that I'm continuing to try to work on and things that I want to implement in the future when I'm working on mechanical things. I think it's going to be one of those things that the better mechanically my jerk can get, then the more I'll be able to clean a jerk. I never think that my clean will be the limiting factor. I definitely think it will be my ability to complete the jerk. Unless that changes drastically, then that will probably be the case. A lot of that is contingent upon my shoulder strength and me continuing to develop that, and obviously leg strength, since that plays a huge factor. But as my technique improves, then I'll just be able to add weight immediately to that. Now, something you notice here, if you look at the positioning of my head, the bar is essentially straight over my head, and that's something that I played with on the max out day, was pushing my head down and getting that to be more forward, which allows my arms to go back a bit more, because I actually have the mobility to do that. It's hard to do that with my head straight up, and you see it kind of with Chinese weightlifters. That's kind of the strategy that they have. Apologize for the background, the heat just turned on. It's actually quite frigid here, and it was actually snowing for quite a bit today, which is kind of odd. Not enough to really stick, but quite a bit nevertheless. So you see my head's kind of straight up, and I actually noticed that when I push my head down forward, I'm able to get my shoulders in a better position behind me, and it's a more stable position. This one, it's less stable, but you know, I've been able to do it, and I haven't tried to fix it since or until the end of this week of training. But it's definitely able to hit a very good 285 jerk this weekend when I did that on this last Sunday, and definitely went really well. So I'm continuing to get stronger at this movement and just continuing to move well. But for this particular day, I had 230 for a 3x2, 245 for a 2x2, and then this 260 for a 2x2 as well, which I mean, this 260, it's got to be a PR, because I don't remember ever doubling this at any point, and this is a pretty darn close to my 1 rep max currently of the clean and jerk and of the rack. I believe my best rack jerk in the form like this, where you walk it out of the rack, is with 285, so it's a pretty high percentage of that, and pretty much what my clean and jerk max is of about 290. So my rack jerk isn't that different, but I think it really should be, honestly. I think without the strain of the clean, I should be able to do a bit more with power jerk. Ended this workout with some barbell rows. This is something I'll keep in with the next cycle of training that I have. I liked having this extra work on this particular day, since it's a heavier volume day. I like throwing that in on this particular day. I don't think it has enough of this kind of accessory work, and I think rows, you get a lot of bang for your buck with working on the upper back and just getting that little extra pump in. With these, same thing with everything else. Now, it's pretty boring, but I've been adding 10 pounds or so each week, and just trying to continue to rep it out and get better at them, and get better at doing the reps with them. But I really like how these feel. The positioning is just kind of all by personal preference, and I just kind of just try to rep them out and pause the last one at the bottom to get a little extra work. With that being said, I'm going to wrap up this video here. I hope to see you all in the next one.